In this video, I'll be showing you my method for changing the side that the door swings on. In this case, I have a door that is swinging into the room the wrong way. I want it to swing, instead of where the hinges are, from right here. Here are the tools I plan on using for this project. The first step will be to fill in the old mortises where the hinges used to be. I'm going to do that with some Bondo. If you've never used Bondo before, it's basically a two-part epoxy. You have a cream, you have a hardener, you mix it up until it's one solid color. I've never had the experience where I did not put enough hardener in. I would say less is more. You get a little more working time if you don't put a ton in. Now I'm just trying to fill in the hinges. The goal here is not to make it look pretty. This is just a first coat to get it higher than the surface of the wood. We're going to make it look pretty by sanding it down. You only have a couple minutes of working time once you've mixed up the Bondo, so just work with it as long as you can. Eventually it'll start to roll off and not be as smooth, and that's when you know you need to stop. You don't have to wait very long before you're ready for a second coat. Here I can still stick my fingernail in. It's still a little tacky, so I'm going to go ahead and start mixing up another batch. So we're just going to go ahead and layer it on as smooth as we can. Again, not worrying really about how it looks, but worrying more that it's covering higher than the surface of the wood so that we can sand it down smooth later. I'll go ahead and put a little bit in the mortise for the other strike plate. Now we're going to hit it with the sander. I'm going at it with some pretty aggressive paper. I have some 60 grit on there and using really light pressure, because sometimes it will chip off and come off the surface of the wood, especially if it hasn't fully cured. So I'm just going really light and taking it down quickly to the surface there so that it's flush and smooth. I sped up this footage. Sanding just takes a while. That's the nature of it. I did pretty good, but there's this little spot that I didn't quite fill up. So I went ahead and put another coat of Bondo, and this is the real trick. I have some sandpaper around a piece of wood. It's just a scrap I found on the job site, and going at it with this, I'm able to make it perfectly flat and perfectly smooth. You can't always do this with just the palm sander. This is how you make the seamless repair. I'm using it almost like a rasp, just going in and following the contour of the wood until it's perfectly flat. Next is a trick that I'm pretty proud of, actually, and I hope that if you take nothing else away from this video, this is something that you use again and again. Basically, I've just taken some regular blue painter's tape and put it on the hinge side of the door. I'm keeping these cutouts here, and then I just go in with the pencil, and you can feel exactly where the cutout is, and you can draw, and it's darker where the corners of the mortise are, basically, and you can get an exact lineup of where your locations are for the hinges. The next thing I do is I just put it in place where I want them to be. I've dropped it down about 1/8 of an inch because that's the gap that I want at the top of the door. And now I can just go in with a knife and score the line, and it's perfect. I've never had any issues with this, and it's much easier than using a measuring tape. Next, I'm going to measure that thickness there left over on the door. Here it was about 1/4 of an inch, and then I just mark that out and I add a 1/16 of an inch. Otherwise it'll bind on your stop trim. So everything's marked out. I just went ahead and hit it with the chisel. I'm recording this with one hand, so it's hard to do on camera. And then I finish out that hinge with an oscillating saw. There's a lot of ways to do this, and this has worked for me, especially for square hinges. So this is what I did in this case. As you can see, it was a perfect fit. It's holding in just with friction. Again, if you want to do this with the chisel, if you want to do this with the router, if you want to do this with a little router plane, go at it. Next, I'm going to go ahead and just put the screws into the old hinge locations on the door. And now the door is up. If you got to this point in the video and you still have some questions, feel free to drop a comment. I hope I added some value here and helped you get through your project. And thanks for watching.